I think about this moment. I think about Senator Kamala Harris, and I think about Shirley Chisholm. I also think about Shirley Chisholm saying she struggled getting support from black men when she ran for president. But could you just speak to this moment of, Senator Kamala Harris, her campaign, she would say that she, for the people, just like Shirley Chisholm. This moment of like I voted for a black woman for the first time for vice president. What
Yeah.
did you ever meet Shirley Chisholm, Mr. Jallo? Did you ever meet her?
No, but I know
Oh,
Kamala Harris well. I've known Kamala
Yeah.
since she was probably well in her early 30s when she was DA of San Francisco. She's a woman of tremendous courage and transformational leadership. Emerge, which is the big organization that trains women to run for office, was founded by women who were architects of her first campaign for district attorney. They said, wow, if we can take over, very conservative, by the way. Historically, San Francisco's DA is very, very conservative, repressive personality. And it was such a transformation, not just have a woman, not just have a black woman, but to have a black woman progressive in that role, that the donors and the other operatives were so inspired that they created an organization called Emerge to encourage more women to run for offices like that across the country. The other thing that happened was that progressives in general said, wow, we really need to take over more of these district attorney offices. And that really, at the time, there were only four, either two or four black elected chief prosecutors. Some places call them district attorneys, some places call them state's attorneys, of jurisdictions of more than 200,000 people in the entire country. And you saw a rapid increase after Kamala won. And it was specifically because the people, again, who had helped with her campaign went and helped a whole bunch of other people, like Craig Williams down in Dallas, for instance, who was the first black DA of Dallas, who won a couple of years after Kamala. So transformative progressive leader as a candidate, longstanding. I was living in San Francisco for a short while she was DA, running a progressive foundation out there. And she had tremendous courage. She ran for DA in a state that has one of the largest death rows in the country. Again, people have a stereotype of California. They don't realize just how conservative the state really is. And she ran as an outspoken opponent of the death penalty. A black boy. I mean, I got teenagers in my house. They are children. Other people call them juveniles when they get in trouble, or they call them, teenagers. They call them young adults. I was a boy, 19-year-old boy. I mean, it had lived a really tough, horrible life, made a really terrible decision, and he shot and killed a police officer early in her term. Kamala Harris had run as opposed to the death penalty. The entire liberal establishment, I mean, from Feinstein on down to like dog catcher, came down on Kamala's head and said, you've got to make an exception for people who kill cops, or you'll never get reelected again. Kamala said, there's no exception. I told you I'm opposed to the death penalty. It's racist. It's targeted almost exclusively on poor people. It's a profound waste of money. And we are absolutely fallible as humans. There's a good chance we've already executed multiple innocent people. No, I'm not doing it. And they said that she would have no future in politics in San Francisco. And she won in San Francisco, and then she won statewide in California, and then she won statewide again, going from state attorney general to senator. Now she's about to become vice president. So I encourage folks, a lot of young folks out there talking a lot of nonsense about Kamala. They really got to dig in and understand who this woman was and try to really imagine what it meant to be DA 20 years ago and what a big deal it was that she was, she said that she stood up then and said, no, I'm not seeking the death penalty, not even when an officer's been shot. That she stood up then and said, I'm not going to prosecute women who, are sold for sex. I will prosecute the men who buy them and the men who sell them. Literally, the police officers in San Francisco did a roundup of accused prostitutes, women working in massage parlors who they said were, selling sex for money. By the way, I'm sorry, massage parlors and strip clubs. And these are parlors and clubs that are frequented by not a small number of men in law enforcement for their own pleasure. And the young district attorney said to them, yeah, I told you, I'm not prosecuting any of them. You bring me the Johns and you bring me the pimps. Well, the pimps are the strip club owners. these cops didn't want to shut down their favorite strip clubs. And that was the end of it, you know?
Mm.
So that's the courage of Kamala Harris and the grit and the toughness. She's the daughter of two great civil rights activists, much beloved in the East Bay, in Oakland, in California. Mom, South Asian immigrant, father, Indian immigrant, her father, a Jamaican immigrant, both of them very active in the civil rights movement. She's the sister of one of the greatest civil rights lawyers in the country, Maya Harris. She's a former head of the ACLU of Northern California. And she became a prosecutor because of a man named Felton Henderson. Felton Henderson was the second Black hired as a prosecutor by the US Department of Justice. He was fired a few years later because he lent Martin Luther King his car, his DOJ car. Why would a prosecutor lend Martin Luther King's car? Because Martin Luther King's own car had broken down in Alabama, and he thought the most important thing the DOJ could do was to make sure that Martin Luther King did not get shot.
Mm.
And so he lent him his car, and then he took Martin Luther King's car, got it fixed, drove it back to Atlanta. Well, by that point, the Sovereignty Commission, which was like the KGB of the old Confederacy, had taken photographs of King driving a DOJ car, and the young prosecutor who lent it to him was fired. And Felton Henderson is now a U.S. federal judge in senior service. He's really stayed on the bench in California to haunt the California penal system and try to shrink the prison system, which is so unnecessarily bloated in that state historically. And he went to a generation of lawyers, starting with Charles Ogletree all the way through Kamala Harris, the 20, 25 years of lawyers coming up in Northern California, and said to each of them, I hear you want to be a defense lawyer. I hear you want to be a civil rights lawyer. That's great. We need more people to fight the power. But I'll tell you what's even more transformative of our community is actually holding the power, having the power, not just defending the person who's accused, but having the power to decide whether they're accused or not. And if they're accused, are they accused of a felony or a misdemeanor? And if it's a felony, which level felony? That's why Kamala became a prosecutor, because she grew up in a community that was much discriminated against and understood that unless people who had the same values as her sister and her parents actually took on the tough jobs, that we only had ourselves to blame if there were really bad people in those tough jobs. And that's the Kamala I know, and I'm excited to see her on the ballot.